اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the marhum Syed Asad Jafri, Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. به نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. On this night we come with heavy hearts to commemorate the loss of one of our great scholars. And had it not been for that loss, then tonight would have been a celebration for this scholar. Because actually today would have been his 48th birthday. And this loss, when we first heard of it, and I think when everyone heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken our beloved Syed Asad Jafri back to him, I don't think I saw a single eye that didn't have tears in it. I did not see a single face that wasn't saddened by this news. So it is a difficult moment. But of course, a moment which I believe that Syed Asad Jafri himself, if he was here, if he was to speak to us, he would let us know that, look, this is a part of our journey. And that we have to prepare for that journey back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His recent speeches, actually this past Muharram, where he was talking about the divine disposition, that everyone acts by their shakila. And he kept drilling this in, their shakila, your disposition. But also to a point that we are able to change that disposition, and we should be directing our disposition, our shakila, to that divine disposition, that we act based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has delivered to us in the Quran, and based on that example that we see from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi wa sallam. So I want to speak about an aspect of Syed's Shakila, his disposition, his divine disposition. And perhaps to some extent we may think of it as to why Syed Asad Jafri, he touched so many people. How did he touch so many people across the world? And this, if you want to put it in today's terms, oh, well, this is a trick of the trade. But it's not a trick. But it's that divine disposition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has laid out for us in the Quran. That divine disposition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us through the example of His Ahlul Bayt, alayhi wa salatu wasalam, for us to, again, to walk that path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanAllah, Syed Asad Jafri, again, if we just, I'll try to give a few glimpses of his life. That yes, before he went to and he lived the life of a student, of a talaba. And it's not I would say, an easy life. I know we've gone through that. It's not an easy life. But he walked away from an offer that, yes, he could have made a lot of money, 6 figures in corporate. But he says, no, I have this calling. I have this calling. I have to study. I have to understand my deen and deliver it to my people. That divine shakila that he was functioning on, that he was operating on, that he was going in that direction. A part of that is in the verse that we mentioned in Surah Al-Ahzab, so chapter 33 of the Quran. This is what we opened up our lecture with, verse 70 and 71 of Surah Al-Ahzab. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us a part of that divine disposition that we should be walking, that we should be living. And especially in this time, that when we are in this time that the believers, and this is one of the things that Syed Asad Jafri was saying, he says, listen, how do we, we are under so much difficulty, under so much attack. Those who want to live a righteous life, a life like Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So how do we live that life? How do we bear the pressure that is coming at us? And I'm not going to give you the same example he gave you. Inshallah, I'll just direct you to it. Go listen to those speeches. But he gave the example of the Hajj, how difficult it was when he made that first ever tawaf. The things that he had to deal with. And those who've gone to Hajj, they know the najis and all these type of things they have to deal with. And he said at one point he rose up above as he was given that advice to look down at the Kaaba to see. He said after he went back for tawaf, then, he still got those bumps and nudges, but he understood the bigger picture to where those things didn't bother him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us this formula in the Quran. This is why I said it's not the trick of the trade. Yeah, if we want to put it in modern terms, what's the trick of the trade? That how he was able to touch so many people. But it's not a trick of the trade. It's truly us understanding the Quran, living by the Quran, living that life of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. And I'm sure he has many aspects of that we can perhaps examine his life and to see how he was walking in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. But I just want to point out one thing, so that we understand that how is it that he touched so many people? And when he spoke, people listened. Everyone listened. His words went from his heart to the hearts of everyone who heard what he said. And this comes as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in verse 70 of Surah Al-Ahzab, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu attaqullah wa qulu qawlan sadida. O you who believe, who have iman, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa qulu qawlan sadida, and speak. And one of the, I really like this translation. It was pretty interesting. It says, and when you speak, your speech, your words should hit the mark. In other words, your statements, your kalam should be on point. And I'll explain what this means. That be on point, should be on target. Like if you're shooting an arrow, then the best place where that arrow to hit is right in the center. It will hit the mark. And his statements, his words, it hit the mark. It hit our hearts. It touched our hearts, touched the lives of people who listened to him, who heard him speak. But one thing I want to point out here before we go into the details of this, again, look at the surah that this is in. Surah Al-Ahzab. What is Surah Al-Ahzab about? When we look at the general context of Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter of the companions, the confederation of all of those individuals, the mushrikeen, the Ahlul Kitab, Yahud, Nasara, who are against Rasulullah, who are against the believers, the mu'mineen. That they joined forces in order to go against Rasulullah and the final revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Surah Ahzab is about. Even to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-Ahzab that the believer, that person who has iman, that when he sees that large federation that is coming at him, what does he do? What happens to the believer? Doesn't become frightened, but it increases his iman. Increases his iman. He says, yes, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. But here in verse 70, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's also giving us a formula that how do you deal with that situation? First, your iman must be grounded. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Because once your iman is solid, your iman is grounded in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah Aliyun Waliyullah. It's grounded in Tawheed. It's grounded in the wilayat of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. And through that you build your taqwallah, your consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we've always stated, that taqwallah means that in every action, every statement, everything that you do, you ensure that my actions are in line with the Quran. My actions are in line with that of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. And at the end of verse 71, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why? That if you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. And that individual, that person has been victorious. It's one of the things that we say after we make ziyarat of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Ziyarat of, again, the shuhada. That they what? That they had that great success. وَيَا لَيْتَنَا كُنَّا مَعَكُمْ فَنَفُوزُ مَعَكُمْ. That we will also be successful like you. Why? Because they walked in the footsteps of their Imam of the time. They walked in the footsteps of the Quran. That is what taqwa is. And with that taqwa, because the foundation, this taqwa becomes the foundation of what? What we say. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe, ittaqullah. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ittaqullah. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. And your speech, your words should hit the mark. What does that mean? قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. In fact, when we look at this statement here in Surah Al-Ahzab, in some sense, it is you can say, a summary, a khalasa, of all of the various ways and different ways in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us how to speak in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, nothing is overturned in the Quran. He's given us the formula that how do we talk? How do we converse with people, with His creation? And it doesn't make a difference whether that creation believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or doesn't. Has Iman, is a Muslim, doesn't have Iman, mulhid, atheist. Whether that person is our parents or not our parents, whether that person is our brother, sister, whether that person is a zalim, is an oppressor, is a tyrant, whether that individual is al-hakim al-adil, is a individual who is just, upright. SubhanAllah, in each and every situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the formula how to speak, how to talk, how to address the situation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in Surah Al-Ahzab, when He says that when you use that formula, قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا, what are the effects of it? يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ, that your actions, whatever you're dealing with, will be resolved, will be on that path of righteousness. وَيَغْفِرُ لَكُمْ ذَنُوبَكُمْ. Subhanallah. And I'll just simply touch on this just briefly because it's here. That quite often we look at that, oh, you know what? If we've disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fortunately, if we've made those slips that we should not have made, then how do we rectify those things? Oh, okay, we go and we make tawbah. We start making astaghfirullah, 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 astaghfirullah. But here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you an easier formula. That even if you didn't do that astaghfirullah, that by this action, قُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا, which we will explain in more detail, that the way you speak and the way you address the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in itself will lead to your forgiveness. But it requires us to have that qawlun sadid. As I said, it is a culmination of how to speak, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us to speak in the Quran. And everywhere you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, at one point He says, قُولَ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, speak kindly, politely. قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا, قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا, speak the best of speech. And sometimes our speech should be, as He says, salama. And someone doesn't believe, salama. الطيب في القول, the best of speech. كلمة حق, truth, truthfulness. When Allama Tabatabai, when he comes across this, and again, he explains it very beautifully. Actually, many of our mufassirin, when you look at this concept, qawlan sadida, when they describe, what does it mean? It means kalimatul haqq wa sidq wal waqi'. Means that it is a speech, it is a statement that is truthful. It's based on reality. It is a speech that in it there's no batil. Nothing about what is said is invalid. Everything is truthful. Everything is correct. But then, most importantly, they said that even if you have a statement, you say something that is truthful, that is correct, that is right, what makes it sadid? They said that it is delivered in the proper way. Because even if you have the truth, even if you're speaking the truth, but that truth is not delivered appropriately, then they say this is not qawlun sadid. One of the meanings of sadid, sad, means to close. Like if you're closing the door, you say, sadd al-bab. Sadd al-bab, close the door. In other words, you're closing the door to any counter-argument against what you're saying. Qawlan sadida, meaning that if you're speaking to someone, again, as we said, look at the chapter that's in Surah Al-Ahzab. When you're facing those individuals who are antagonistic towards you, your way of life, your lifestyle, those who may be oppressing you, that your speech is based on proof, on hujjah, on proof. That's also one of the meanings. And again, quite often when Syed Asad Jafri, he spoke, again, he would refer to a verse of the Quran, we refer to the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. So that qawlun sadid, that also when it is packaged, when it is delivered in the proper way, whether you're talking to friend or foe, that becomes qawlun sadid. Why? Because nothing about what you've said can be objected. Oh, well, yeah, what he stated was fact. What he stated was truth. The way it was delivered was not a means that, oh, you know what? See, you know what? He's saying the truth, but the way he's saying it is belittling me. So why should I accept it? And actually, even sometimes the way it's said, if you're belittling a person, even if it's truth, even if it's haqq, the way it's delivered, it creates that barrier where the person doesn't hear it. The believer, the mu'min, that even under the most extreme pressure and difficulty, is that individual that has a qawlan sadid. In fact, when you look at it, again, let's really think about it. That when we look at our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what was the miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I think Nabi Musa, he had miracles that, again, at that time, magic and these type of things, people were amazed by and dazzled by what they saw their eyes. Oh, this thing is changing into that. So Musa, he had to come. The Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that miracle that was superlative to that. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam also, when he came, people, oh, well, we have this medicine, we know this thing, and we give him. So his ability was superlative than that. I'll raise the dead. I'll cure the person who was blind from birth. No physician could do that. But in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yes, he had those type of miracles, but that wasn't his greatest miracle. That was for individuals who were perhaps stuck in that phase of, oh, well, I have to see these things dazzle before my eyes. But the greatest miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was what? The Quran. It was what? Kalam, speech. The way he delivered, the way he spoke to people, the way he engaged and encounter and interact with others. Now, what's the miracle of Rasulullah? And this is why we find that emphasis in the Quran. That that teaches us that how do we speak to each other? How do we talk to each other? How do we speak to someone like Yazid? In the court of Yazid. How do we speak to Fir'aun in the court of Fir'aun? SubhanAllah, Syed Asad, when he talks about, again, finding that divine disposition, again, living the life of the Quran, living the life of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, this is all a part of it. To have that qawl and sadid, that when you finish making your statement, there's no rebuttal. When Musa spoke to Fir'aun in his own castle, he couldn't say, oh, Musa, you were this way or that way. Whatever you said is invalid. He couldn't say anything. His only objection is like, oh, two of the people I brought as magicians to fool everyone, they actually saw the truth. So the only rebuttal of Fir'aun was like, why did you believe and I didn't tell you you could believe? In the court of Yazid, when Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi hafizahullah, and we'll focus on that a little bit. When he spoke, what was the response of Yazid? He's like, oh, yeah, what he's saying is the truth. Look, I don't want people to hear this truth. Call the adhan. And it diverted to another truth, because when the mu'adhin said, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, whose grandfather is this? Qawl and sadid. Impossible for those individuals to take the words of the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the words of Ahlul Bayt, and twist it against him. Impossible. This is qawl and sadid. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he states in the Quran, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We made the Quran Arabic. Here, Arabic doesn't mean the language as a language Arabic. Al-Arabi, when we look at the true meaning of Arab, means clear, fasih, eloquent, the best of expressions. Jadilhum billati hiya ahsan, as Allah says. He says, when you engage with him, you engage with the best statements, the best of words, the most powerful of speeches. That they will have absolutely no reply, no rebuttal to. And this is why Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi wasallam, of course, after Rasulullah, walking and speaking that speech of the Quran, he says, Inna la umara'ul kalam. He says that we are the commanders of language. We are the emirs of language. In other words, when you truly examine the sermons, the lifestyles, how the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal, how they engage, and really studied, not simply, we're quoting all these hadith. No, truly examine, look at what they're saying. What we will learn is that from them, if we're truly paying attention, what to say and what not to say, when to say and when not to say, how to say, and to say what to whom, all of this is in there. All of this is in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal. Syed Asad Jafri, he was one of those individuals, he was very skilled at delivering that as well. Very skilled. And this is why he touched so many people. So how he said what he said, when he said. And as Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasallam, he stated, He says, تَكَلَّمُوا تُعْرَفُوا. He says, speak. Speak. And when you talk, though, he says, know that you will be known. Using that same expression of Syed Asad Jafri for his past Muharram, that one way to know your shakila, your disposition, is what? When you talk. Now, what is your disposition? Is your disposition a Quranic disposition? That when you speak, you're speaking like that of the Quran, like that of Rasulullah, like that of the Ahlul Bayt. Are your thoughts in line with that of the Quran, in line with that of Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus wasalam, or something completely different? It's not sufficient to say, oh yes, I follow Amir al-Mu'minin, I follow the Ahlul Bayt. Because I will give you a place where the qawl was not sadid either on either side. Let me just give you the example of Siffin. Battle of Siffin. Abu Musa Ash'ari, he went to negotiate on behalf of Amir al-Mu'minin. The other person came on behalf of Muawiyah. Amir al-Mu'minin, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasallam, he told Abu Musa Ash'ari, he says, listen, he says, when you go, you mention what my statement is. This is my position. Either they accept it or they don't accept it. This is my position. This is my stance. So you speak what I say, but don't engage with the Quran. If they bring up the Quran or they want to give some, he says, no. My statement is my statement. This is what you should deliver. Abu Musa Ash'ari, representing him, he goes forth. And what happens, they say, the whole conversation begins with, hey, well, you know what? Abu Musa Ash'ari, you have a problem with Muawiyah ruling. And we have a problem with Ali ibn Abi Talib ruling. But let's look at the Quran. Let's see what does the Quran say. In al-hukm illa Allah. It should only be Allah that's ruling, correct? Abu Musa Ash'ari says, yeah, that makes sense. True. So he tells Abu Musa Ash'ari, he says, why don't you go back and you tell to stand down, peace, and I'll go and say that we'll stand down too. No one will rule. No one. So Abu Musa Ash'ari goes back and he tells Amir al-Mu'minin this. Amir al-Mu'minin says, Subhanallah. He says, did I not tell you to say what I said, to give my position? Don't engage, even if they're bringing the Quran, because what? It is a deception. Deception from that side. Qawlun sadid is not deception. And that's why Imam Ali, he says, yes, even though in al-hukm illallah, Imam Ali says, kalimatu haqqin yuradu bihi batil. The statement is true, but what they're intending is not true. So therefore, that qawl is not qawl sadid. And Abu Musa Ash'ari, your path was not qawl sadid. Why? Because you didn't walk that footstep, that walk of your Mawla, of Amir al-Mu'minin. So here we can see that, oh yes, truth is there, but the deliverance and what is intended by that is not correct. So it's not Qawlun Sadid. Qawlun Sadid, that statement that hits the mark, is truthful. What is intended by it is also truthful. Just for the sake of time, because I don't want to extend too long. But just the importance of this. Learning how to speak as the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam, they spoke. Learn to speak as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches us in the Quran. And I would say, unfortunately, Half of our dilemma is that we don't know how to speak. Not to each other, and definitely not to power. I mean tyrannical power. When it comes to speaking to power, some may be capitulating. We got to bow our heads. No. Not for one moment you will find that any of the Anbiya, any of the prophets, any of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wassalam, that they held their head down, undignified, in the face of tyranny and injustice or a tyrant. Why? Because when you have iman, taqwallah, and your qawl, your statement is qawlun sadid, that what I'm speaking is truth. What I'm saying are facts. What I'm saying are facts. And in my statement, and subhanAllah, maybe inshallah tomorrow, I'll speak about this. There are many riwayat about this, about how to speak, how to engage, even in times of difficulties. Not to make slurs, not to make accusations that are unfounded. According to his riwayat, it says it's haram. It says even as someone who doesn't believe the way you believe, even someone who's not a Muslim, that you accuse them of something and you have no facts, you have no proof of it. Haram. It's haram. Trust me, to maintain that composure when you're under pressure, as we are now, as the Ummah is now, to maintain that composure, it's not easy. I wouldn't say it's easy. But we have to walk that walk of the Quran. We have to walk that walk and talk that talk of the Quran and Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim afsalatu wassalam. Why? Because that is where, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ. Your actions will be corrected. You'll be heading in the correct direction. Because even as, again, just even summarize the statements, as the Prophet of Allah, he told Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, when you confront someone, he says, the first thing you do, he says, before you become their, you say, antagonists, before you begin, you invite them to truth, al-haq. Even if we say, oh yeah, this person may not accept the truth. But this is part of qawlun sadid, that look, here's the truth, come, accept the truth. Accept the truth. That is itmamul hujjah. You're closing the door for any rebuttal. Because they themselves, they know it's true. Documentation is like, oh, absolutely true. You can't get out of it. If you say it's not and it's already proven, it's a fact, then everyone says, oh, this person is just a liar. Qawlan sadid. And then when it comes to each other, again, just to summarize, I don't want to take too much time, because there's one point beautiful point I want to make. When it comes to each other, and this is in the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt, especially in times of difficulty, in times of conflict, that it is forbidden to say something, again, to another mu'min, to the point that it deters them from that path of truth, or even supporting what is true. Even if they're maybe mistaken in some things, but if you say something in a way that it deters them from supporting that truth, is that person who made the statement, they're responsible. That if that person falls off the path, if that person then stops supporting what is truth and haqq altogether, so the only tawbah for that is to go back to that person so that they can come back to that position of truth. That you have to go and you have to explain to him, you have to seek forgiveness for him, and you have to bring him back to that position of truth. This is qawl sadid, but unfortunately, sometimes even the way we interact and engage with each other, we're knocking each other off the path of what we should be doing. Why? Because, this person doesn't have a fervor like this. Again, who went with Imam Hussein? It's only 72. The other people didn't care for Imam Hussein? Yes, there were people who cared. But perhaps they didn't have that same heart that these 72 had. Some of them later, they were affected by, some of them rose to the occasion afterwards. But those who knew their responsibility to duty at that time, they didn't belittle them. They said, look, I'm acting my responsibility. And perhaps my acting based on what my responsibility is, what my duty is, will inspire them to do what is right. Will inspire them to make that stance that they should be making. But for now, do I belittle you? Do I talk negative? No. Why? Because that was not the akhlaq of the Ahlul Bayt. That was not the akhlaq of those who truly walked in those footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt. I want to end just with this one aspect, inshallah, and then we go into Musibah. When Imam Zain al-Abidin, and again, this is the kalam of Ahlul Bayt, that qawlun sadid, that when Imam Zain al-Abidin, he introduced himself, especially with the qualities that the Ahlul Bayt they have. He says one of those qualities that we have as Ahlul Bayt is al-fasaha, our eloquence. In other words, qawlun sadid. And again, go back. Look at in Karbala, all those who came forward. Of course, the Imam himself, his speech is perfect, but look at those who were following the Ahlul Bayt. Look at their statements. One of the scholars, when he examines the speech of Imam Zain al-Abidin in the court of Yazid, and I'm not going to go into all of it, just indication. He actually counts the letters that Imam Zain al-Abidin, to this extent, they said that the fasaha of Ahlul Bayt was. And that sermon in the court of Yazid said Imam Zain al-Abidin used the letter ba 88 times. And so this linguist, he says that ba is a letter, again, he's using it eloquently. He says the sound of ba phonetically is a sound of power. It is something that when it's said and when it's pronounced, it strikes the person who is speaking, but in the most elegant way. And don't think it is haphazard that when we begin our Quran, Bismillahir-Rahman, Bismillah. In one part of the sermon of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a sermon of Imam Zain al-Abidin, when he talks about, again, where he's from, who is he from? He says, Anabanu man balagha bihi Jibra'ilu ila sidratil muntaha. But it's also, again, showing the, as I say, fakhr as well, to show honor, dignity. Again, so he's speaking from a very dignified position, that I am the son of the one who Jibra'il has elevated to the Sidratul Muntaha. But if you listen to it, 4 times he's using ba. Again, being very firm, dignified, but also eloquent. Anabanu. من بلغ به جبرائيل إلى سدرة المنتهى. This is just one aspect that I wanted to point out. And as well in the du'as of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, we find that aspect of, again, asking for that qawlun sadid, asking for that eloquence. In Sahifat al-Sajjadiyya, and one of the du'as we read, Allahumma ja'al li lisana sidqin fil ghabirin, that Allah give me a truthful tongue, that my truthfulness, my truthful speech, it remains behind for everyone to hear, everyone to know, everyone to understand. Tahmudaka nafsi wa lisani wa aqli. And in my speech, it is a praise for you. And my speech in itself shows who I am. My speech is connected with your speech. My speech shows that, again, where's my thoughts? Where is it grounded at? This is the eloquence of Ahlul Bayt. This is the qawlun sadid. But also in that qawlun sadid of Ahlul Bayt as well, it is a speech that hits the heart, that penetrates the heart, that softens the heart. And this is also when Imam Zayn al-Abidin, that after the tragedy of Karbala, in one of those instances he's introducing himself, he states, أنا ابن الحسين المذبوح بشط الفرات. أنا ابن الحسين المذبوح بشط الفرات. I am Ali ibn al-Hussein, the son of the one who was martyred. How was he martyred? He was martyred thirsty, though his body laid beside the river Euphrates. أنا ابن من انتهك حريمه وسبي عياله. I am the son of the one whose haram, whose family, that they were attacked, their tents were destroyed and set on fire, and the women and children were taken captive. أنا ابن من قتل صبرا. I am the one who was martyred while he was patient. Sabra. What did this mean? That he was the he was the son of the one who was killed. Sabra. What patience was that Imam Hussein he had? That Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, my father was killed and he was patient. Was it because when Shimr al-La'in, he sat upon his chest with all of the arrows that after Imam Hussein had those arrows in his bodies? Was that a slow decapitation of Imam Hussein? That Imam Zayn al-Abidin says that, look how my father was patient, though he was being martyred, though he was being slaughtered. Or did it have a different meaning? Because we know in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives good tidings to the patient ones. What does Allah say? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. He says, give good tidings to those who are patient. Give good tidings when? الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes those patient individuals in the Quran, that when they are faced with musibah, they say that we are from Allah and to Allah we will return. So does Imam Zayn al-Abidin mean this? That when he says, أَنَا بْنُ مَنْ قُتِلَ صَبَرًا, I am the son of the one who was killed patiently. Meaning what? That Imam Hussein, that though the masibas that he saw on the day of Karbala, in Karbala on the day of Ashura, that he patiently saw these masibas. What was those masibas that Imam Hussein he saw? He saw his companions one by one being martyred on the battlefield. Habib ibn Mudahir, Zuhair ibn Qayn, Muslim ibn he saw all of them martyred, and Imam Hussein, he remained patient. But tell me that how much can one man remain patient, especially when his eldest son goes out onto the plains of Karbala? That when Ali al-Akbar, when he goes out onto the plains of Karbala, and he's martyred on those plains, that Imam Hussein, he had to remain patient. He had to remain patient and just say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. But tell me, was that patience, was it broken? No, it wasn't broken. It was not broken, even though his brother Abul Fadl al-Abbas, that when he fell on the plains of Karbala, that he said, Ya akhi, adrik akha, that, oh my brother, come and help your brother, come into the rescue of your brother. That Imam Hussein, that he was patient and he knew that this was the final moment, that this was the last straw. He says, that this has broken my back. And Imam Hussein knew at that point, as this ayat says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, that after the martyrdom of his brother Abul Fadl al-Abbas, that he too will return back to Allah. Ala la'natullahi ala qawmi al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا ورحم أمواتنا، وبالخصوص سيد أسد جعفري، وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشيرين بين يديه وتحت لواء بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين.